Today, let's talk about snares. You know what a snare is? A snare is a trap. It's something that entangles. You and I can create snares for ourselves. Literally, the very thing that God wants to give us as a blessing can become a curse. The things that He wants to do in us to make us stand tall can make us fall flat. You and I have got to be careful. Just like Joseph, we have a possible snare. We've been looking at a couple of things. Number one, we said we'd look at Joseph's attractive heir, and he had that. Potiphar saw it. He saw Joseph as talented, gifted, trustworthy, faithful, and so he put him in charge of everything in his house. He had an attractive heir, and what was the result? Trust. Potiphar trusted him. But Joseph also had a possible snare. Oh, it's his possible snare. It says right out of the gate in verse 6 that Joseph was well-built and handsome. It's pretty interesting. The text hasn't said that about anybody in Genesis, but here it says it about Joseph. Why? Because beauty has been around for a long time, and mankind can be distracted by beauty, and female kind can be distracted by beauty as well. So Joseph, well-built and handsome, it says, caught Mrs. Potiphar's eyes. She saw him and she says to him, "Come to bed with me." Just like Potiphar saw an attractive heir, Joseph's possible snare was his strength. He was beautiful inside and out. Mrs. Potiphar saw it, and she was attracted to that just as much as Potiphar was attracted to his faithfulness and his trustworthiness. And what was the result? Well, with Mr. Potiphar, it was trust. With Mrs. Potiphar, it was lust. She lusted after what was attractive about Joseph. Not just his beauty on the inside, but also his beauty on the outside. You see, whenever we are kind of clueless to our strengths, they can become a weakness. And if we are to be in charge of our strengths, we have to recognize they can become a weakness. Someone might say to you, "You're so beautiful. You're so handsome. You're so talented. You're so smart. You're such a good conversationalist. You have a way with words." Whatever the strength, it could be a weakness. Your very strength could be your present weakness. Joseph did several things that created boundaries, and those boundaries were violated. But Joseph understood that some things needed to be done if he's going to be in Potiphar's house. It says that Joseph resisted Mrs. Potiphar's advances. It says day after day, the Message Bible says incessantly, she approached him about going to bed with her. And he resisted her day after day as it happened. First boundary, resist temptation. The second thing he did is he refused to even be with her. This boundary says, I'm going to have to create more distance between you and me in order for me to maintain the trustworthiness that my master expects and the integrity before God that I desire. When you and I recognize our vulnerabilities, it's not enough to know they're there. We must create healthy boundaries. We must say, in some circumstances, I simply have to resist. And in some circumstances, I must not even go. How are your boundaries as you are navigating what God's given you charge over, what God's entrusted to you, those very gifts, those very strengths, those very places where you excel? You may be vulnerable. Oh Lord, that you would help us to recognize where you have made us strong, so we do not fall and become weak. Lord, what you've given us as a blessing, to not become a curse. Lord, empower us to set the kind of boundaries that enable us to glorify and honor you with whatever you've given us. We are what we are. We have what we have because of your gracious love and your generous gifts. We submit all of them to you. I'll see you tomorrow.